Hello and welcome to the FUTVE English podcast, your one-stop shop for Venezuelan football in English, bringing you fortnightly episodes dedicated to the Venezuelan League, the national teams and the myriad of Venezuelan players around the world. Today we're joined by Colombian football expert Simon Edwards to discuss some new faces for Liga FUTVE in 2021. In particular, 3 Colombians new to this league. One coming up from the second division with Hermanos Colmenarez, Juan Camilo Zapata, who was named player of the season and top goal scorer. Ricardo Delgado, a new face to Hermanos Colmenarez this season. And finally, Jesus Marimon, a former Colombian wonder kid who was signed with Mineros de Guayana. Simon, welcome to the FUTVE English podcast. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Thanks for the invitation. I've increasingly become interested and I'm very excited to see the growth of Venezuelan football. So yeah, this is my new passion. I love Colombian football, but I find Venezuelan football very, very interesting and there's lots of talent. So yeah, happy to talk about our neighbors across the border.
So one thing that has characterized Venezuelan transfer windows, particularly the one in the January, February months in recent years, is an exodus of players year after year, and increasingly to better leagues and increasingly to Europe directly as well. And this window has been no exception. The footfall to Europe hasn't been quite as high, but in general, the high volume of players have increased. And one big beneficiary of this year has been Colombia. But also, some of the imports this season have also come from Colombia, and some of the most exciting ones by the looks of it. Juan Camilo Zapata is a good place to start, mainly because you've played with him. So I think we should start there. Tell us about playing with Juan Camilo Zapata and what anyone who is watching Liga FUTVE this season can expect from the trickster.
Yeah, so Zapata's an interesting one. He's a good kid. He's a good guy. I think he's made a few decisions in terms of his career. And I think it really shows how important those off-the-field decisions can be, because he came through at Envigado, the professional Envigado, not my Sunday league team Envigado, we'll come to those, but he came through at Envigado and he was a hot prospect. He played for their U20 side, which was very, very successful. Now, Envigado is a team which has produced some of Colombia's best players: James Rodriguez, Juan Fernando Quintero, Frank Fabra, Mateus Uribe, Dolan Pavon, Giovanni Moreno. The list is long and long and long. And it's probably one of the best academies in Colombia, and Zapata was an important young player. Their U20 side was very strong and they went to Italy to play a tournament. He played many of the games there in Italy, playing against AC Milan and Benfica, and he was tipped for big things. As often is the case with young players, he got his first starts in the Colombian Cup, where he was one of the top goal scorers for Envigado in that cup competition. Did very, very well. Started getting league minutes, was playing increasingly as a kind of a right winger. In terms of his style of play, coming through, what you would see is very smart movement. He's quite small, but he has a good leap. He has good athleticism and he's very quick. And what came through initially is his smart movement off the ball, would play 1-2s and then break into the final third. I think as a young player, he was a bit too selfless at times. And I think that's something he's adapted his game. And we'll talk about his recent seasons there in Venezuela. But at times he was very collective, but wasn't perhaps as selfish as he had to be in the final third. So came through at Envigado, started getting minutes, had a little bit of a disagreement with the board in terms of the minutes he was getting, wanted more first team starts. I think as an observer of the team, he probably deserved them. But, of course, it's a decision that's made by the manager, and he was asking for more minutes. Ended up moving out on loan to Valledupar in the second division in Colombia, where he did get the minutes and scored plenty of goals in the second tier. Came back to Envigado. I think perhaps it would have been smart to have continued with Valledupar, but returned to Envigado and then moved out on loan to Boyacá Chico, where 15 minutes into his debut, he fell awkwardly and got a bad injury that kept him out for a long period of time. Long injury, came back to training with Envigado, but was struggling. His contract came to an end, and then he found himself without a club. So he was playing for teams in Medellin, playing for my Sunday league team, playing for teams all over the place. Basically, clubs in and around Medellin would give him a bit of cash to come and play for their team. He played for me for free, but other teams were paying him $20 to play a game, $15 to play a game here. So that was really the level at which he was playing at one point. That was his income. He got the opportunity to go to Venezuela to the second tier with Hermanos Colmenarez, and then obviously the pandemic hit, and he was thinking, his luck really is out with everything that's happened in his career. He was very happy to see the club respect his contract, keep his accommodation, continue to pay his wages. And then I think he really did repay the club's support by, again, scoring 14 goals in 14 games there in the second division, and play as a striker, often as a second striker, but really do very, very well. And now he's in the first division. Had interest, obviously, after scoring so many goals in the second tier from some big clubs in Venezuela, some big clubs around South America, but has decided that he wants to repay the faith the club have put in him and try to reproduce that form in the top division in Venezuela.
So going from playing with him yourself in, 2019?
Yes.
And now 2020, seeing him play professional football in Venezuela's second division, did you expect him to destroy the league in the manner he did? Like, he was player of the season, he was top goal scorer, and I think it's fair to say he got Hermanos Colmenarez promoted himself. I think without him, I think the club they wouldn't have got promoted.
I was delighted to see it. Now, I knew at his very best, he was good enough to have a massive, massive impact in the league. But I've also seen him really struggling for fitness when he joined Boyacá Chico. Like, he joined the team and then got injured, but he was off the pace when he joined Boyacá Chico. I think he'd had a pause in his career. He had an injury, and it looked like it was a big setback for him physically. So I knew if we saw Zapata of his early years in Colombia, his years in the second division, he would have a big impact, as he had done in Envigado and Valledupar. But I obviously had concerns that after that time out, it may surprise you, but my Sunday League team isn't the best level physically. And he was able to bang in the goals in my Sunday League team. But, I was worried that he would be a stupidly good player at that level, but not necessarily make the step up. But I'm delighted to see that, his confidence is back, his fitness. He looks sharper than I'd seen him for the last couple of years before he returns to professional football. I think obviously the pause has had an impact on him, but I think it also helped him to recover from a few niggling injuries. So yeah, I'm delighted for him. I was very, very happy, and everyone was obviously following his career. A lot of people involved in this level of football in Colombia were very happy to see that guy that they've been playing with banging in the goals. And while I think he was very, very important for Hermanos Colmenarez, he had a bit more support than for us. 10 men behind the ball, stick Zapata up front and lump it forward, and he can score. But it was interesting to see him take a leadership role for Colmenarez as well. Playing as a striker, but also dropping in to build the play, taking responsibility for the game. He seems to become a much more mature, focused forward into his mid-20s. He's not a winger. He's not a player looking to kind of work hard and try and contribute. He's happy to be the main man, and he's settled very well. So it'll be fascinating to see if he can continue that form. And it seems in pre-season he's been scoring some more goals and contributing well. So far so good, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. His pre-season has been strong. Hermanos Colmenarez, their pre-season in general has been strong with their on-pitch performances as well as their signings. They've signed Pedro Ramirez, who was at Zamora last season, from Barinas, which is where Hermanos Colmenarez are too, for those that don't know. And they've also signed a number of other very impressive signings domestically from other Liga FUTVE teams, as well as overseas, and another Colombian, Ricardo Delgado. So what can you tell us about Delgado? Is it just the Colombian nationality that these two players have in common, or have they got a shared past?
No, they've been playing together since they were like 13 years old. So it's very interesting. And I know that as Zapata was trying to get himself back into professional football, he was also, sending out Delgado's CV. They're both products of Envigado. They're both players who have been in that same U20 team. So they've played together since 2012, 2013 in Colombia. They both played for Envigado. As I say, with Delgado, he's more of an attacking midfielder. He's a player with great technical ability, a little bit small, 5'5", lacks some of that obvious physical quality, but he's quite sharp. think a bit of a chubby Jefferson Soteldo. There we go. Put it in Venezuelan terms, that kind of player. So perhaps he'll surprise some people. He's sharper than he looks, but he doesn't look like a great footballer. But we've seen his ability. He moved to Jaguares on loan, and then also played in Valledupar with Zapata. So they played together twice. And he also played top division with Deportivo Pasto. At Valledupar, he was one of the best players in the second division. Scored some 45-yard screamer. You check out the goal against América de Cali, where he beats two players and then fires one in from about the halfway line, top corner. Really, really technically strong, good on free kicks, creative attacking midfielder, who's quite sharp, not massively explosively quick over a long distance, but has good acceleration. So yeah, very interesting. He had a weird last year. He went to Pirata in Peru, which didn't really work out. A newly promoted Peruvian team. They're a team that won the Peruvian Cup. So they went from like the 5th division to the Premier League, as in, which is the weird old league in Peru. And he was one of the guys they brought in, but it didn't really work out there. And he played a few games for Bogota and then didn't have a club last year. So again, it's one of those, I think, smart acquisitions, but potentially slightly risky for Hermanos Colmenarez. He's a player at his best who could be one of the best players in the Venezuelan league, but has had a combination of bad luck and bad choices, I think, in the past. So it's very much a similar situation to Zapata. I'm sure Zapata's been speaking to the managers and convincing them that this is the guy they need to sign. But he was definitely one of the best players in the Colombian second division and did a decent job in the top flight. So a bit of a risk, but a player with a very good ceiling, a very good technical ability. So I'm sure Delgado will hit some golazos in Venezuela. Whether he can be consistently good enough throughout the year to hold down a key starting position, we'll have to see. But he definitely has the ability to be able to do that.
And do you think, with the interest that we know Juan Camilo Zapata had from other clubs, not just in Venezuela, but across the continent, the signing of Delgado may have had some influence from Zapata, also acting as like a sweetener to keep him, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe. I know the club spoke to Zapata just as they were coming to the end of the season. They were very keen for him to commit to next season, and I think for Zapata, the reason that he wanted to continue when some of the biggest clubs, even in Venezuela, some of the top teams in Venezuela were at least asking about Zapata. I think one reason he wanted to continue was because they'd kept with him throughout the year, and also having spent a year out of football. I think it's important for him to have some consistency and to continue having the assurance that he'll have an important position in the side. So I think it's a bold decision to kind of turn down some massive offers. But I think it's maybe a sensible one, given that the year that followed his return to football was so difficult. So yeah, of course, having his mate Ricardo over there will definitely keep him happy, and I think the two of them could strike up a good partnership. They were definitely very dangerous with Valledupar, and if they can get that again, Delgado from midfield's got 14 goals for Valledupar, and Zapata was one of the top scorers there. So it was a very deadly partnership at Valledupar, and it was also a partnership in the Colombian Cup with Envigado that worked very well. So interesting to see how it goes.
With Zapata sort of coming up from essentially, amateur football 2 years ago to now the top flight of Venezuelan football, and Ricardo Delgado being the kind of player he is, there's sort of like crude comparisons to maybe Jamie Vardy as Zapata and Riyad Mahrez at Ricardo Delgado. Maybe Hermanos Colmenarez can have a Leicester City-esque season this year with the 3-group stage that the season is set to take.
Yeah, it will be great to see. They're two great players who've been playing Sunday League football, very recently in their career, but have also that experience of top level Colombian football and having an impact in Colombia. So I think a fascinating story to follow, and it had me watching YouTube live streams, as dodgy as they can occasionally be, of Venezuelan second division football. So there we go. Already drawing in the crowds. Yeah,
it'd be interesting actually to hear your opinion on the quality of the Venezuelan second division, because I know I was talking to a couple of players and a couple of teams throughout the short 2020 season last year, telling them to keep an eye on Juan Camilo Zapata, because you told me, very enthusiastically that he was going to be one to watch, and he did exactly as you said he would. And then in December, a couple of people said, well, let's see if he can do it in the first division, because there's a big jump in quality. Do you agree that the jump in quality could be a test for Zapata? Because pre-season he's continued that form, and the second division was a very condensed tournament. It was played in a very short amount of time, but Zapata kept his fitness up. He kept the goals flowing. How did you see the quality in comparison to what Zapata had previously played at, and perhaps what he can expect to play at this season?
Yeah, I think for me, what struck me was there was a big difference between the best players and some of the weaker players in each team. I think, you know, at its best, there were some very talented players who I'm sure, and I think that's probably why we've seen Hermanos Colmenarez strengthen quite strongly, because I think they've got 5 or 6 players, or maybe a little more, who could easily make the step up and do very well. And then I thought there was a few who were kind of slightly making up the numbers, who are slightly off the pace. And I think that was what struck me about quite a few teams. So there's definitely really good quality in the second tier from what I've seen. But perhaps it's financial, perhaps it's perhaps a struggle to kind of fill the squads with top tier talent. So I'm not surprised that Hermanos Colmenarez have stuck with a core part of their squad and have added a few extras to add a bit more quality and a bit more depth, because I definitely think there was good quality, and there were definitely players who caught my eye, and I thought, wow, this is an interesting player. You know, I was happy to see Zapata do so well, and I do think he'll be an important player in the top division. But it doesn't surprise me that they wanted to strengthen and build the squad, because what struck me is when they made a few changes, the level dropped quite significantly. There were a few players who were kind of on the fringes who didn't quite have the same level. So I think their first 11 were strong, but then as they made changes, I think the level dropped off. So I think they've strengthened quite well, and what you've told me, they've added some good experienced players. So they should I think do quite well next year.
Yeah, they definitely have. They brought in 2 of the 4 Osorio brothers. Most people will know Jordan Osorio, the senior team centre-back, who's at Parma in Serie A this season, having been on loan at Zenit St. Petersburg from Porto last year. But there's 4 of them. His youngest brother, Jehovah Osorio, is at Zamora. And the 2 other Osorio brothers are new signings for Hermanos Colmenarez. They're just 2 of many signings that they've made this summer. Another key one added to the midfield is another former Zamora man, a captain who won league titles there, and Deportivo Táchira. So it's a really strong window for Hermanos Colmenarez, and it was, on a personal note, really pleasing to see, because in 2019, when I was in Venezuela, Hermanos Colmenarez came very close to getting promotion to the top flight, and narrowly missed out. And again, this season, given the format, again, it came down to the wire. So it was really nice to see them get promoted, even though it came at the expense of Guayana Sporting Club, a team that at FUTVE English we were supporting last season. So it was a bittersweet moment. But lastly, our third Colombian that we're putting the spotlight on today, Jesus Marimon. This one was interesting for me, because normally it's me pestering you about players in Liga FUTVE and saying, hey, Simon, look at this guy. But this time it was you telling me an exciting transfer to Liga FUTVE that you wanted to tell me about. Why the excitement? I'd never heard of him.
Yeah, well, I hope it's exciting. I honestly, I don't know. And that's, I think, what is the interesting part with Jesus Marimon, because he was a brilliant 16-year-old. If you were signing the 16-year-old Jesus Marimon, it would be global news, right? Because he was a first-team player in Colombia at 16. He was a U20 player at this age. He was wanted by Manchester City. He was on the radar of every club in the world. He was the new Yaya Toure. He was a new Patrick Vieira. He was the football manager wonder kid who you couldn't not sign. And a lot has happened since then. Only a few years have passed, but we're not talking about the same Jesus Marimon. Now, how far he is from that, we have to wait and see. Now, he came through a very, very interesting player. He's a central midfielder with very good technical abilities, physical, box-to-box, energetic, strong, good composure on the ball, great maturity as a 16, 17-year-old at Once Caldas and also with the Colombian national team. You know, it was a case of, as soon as he turns 18, everyone's going to want to sign him. Now, what happened, and now there are various versions of this story. Now, part of it is injuries. He's had a few injuries over the years. which will have had an impact. And part of it is when there's a player in such demand, it can create issues in terms of their development. And there are versions of the story, but basically what his agent and what the player have said is that the club asked him to sign a new contract. He said, no, I don't want to sign a contract extension. You know, I believe my future is in Europe and I don't want to extend my contract to impact upon that opportunity. I want to be able to have control over my move to Europe. And the club said, fine, if you don't want to sign a contract, we'll put you in the reserve team. We'll put you in the youth team. So he went from playing first team football at 16, 17 to playing in the youth team at 18 years old. And that has had a big impact. Eventually, when his contract came to an end, he moved to Belgium, and that didn't particularly work out. Again, suffered another bad injury recurrence, found himself somewhere in South America. I think he was in Chile during the pandemic, looking to try to get home, struggling for money. So it's a real, a kind of a career lesson in fast forward with Jesus Marimon. Now, he's had some injuries, he's had some bad luck, he's had some contractual disputes, he's had perhaps some bad advice, perhaps he took some bad decisions himself, but it's very much, I would say, a career fast forward. Now, what is left is what will be fascinating to see, because he's a player. He was at Patriotas in 2019, back in Colombia, played a couple of games, again, injuries. So we'll see what happens, because he's a player at his best who is very, very good. And he's 22 years old. You know, we're talking about a 6-foot complete box-to-box midfielder, great on the ball, makes things happen. We will see if he still has football in him. It will be a tragedy if he doesn't, because he was very, very good as a teenager. And we'll just have to see. He didn't get any games in Belgium. And limited games in Colombia. So it's kind of a last chance situation in Venezuela. We'll have to see what happens. But as I say, if it works out, then he's going to be a huge coup, a huge signing. But many things are working against him. So he'll be an interesting to watch. I really hope he can get his career back on track, because the talent is undoubtedly there. But he'll be an interesting one. He'll either be a sad case of a player whose career's gone off track, mostly with injuries and partly with bad decisions or unfortunate circumstances. But if it works out, it will be fascinating. And there's a real top European level player there if he can find that form again.
And he signed for Mineros, who currently lead Aragón 1-0 after their first leg of the Sudamericana qualifier. By the time this goes out, it will be the morning of the second leg. If Mineros can hold that lead, it means Jesus Marimon will be getting up to 6 games on the continent. The Sudamericana's got a group stage this year. So it could be an astute move for his career should they beat Aragón, because he's going to have that showcase of Sudamericana football. The change in format to Sudamericana to get that many games has benefited some nations more than others, but it could be a real benefit to Marimon as well as Venezuelan teams in general, because it can be the case that you play a whole season to qualify for Sudamericana, and one tough draw means, you know, a Venezuelan team's journey in Sudamericana can be over within 2 games, within one 2-legged tie. So it'll be really interesting to see 2 Venezuelan teams, one of either Mineros and Aragón and one of Academia Puerto Cabello and Metropolitanos, get lots of group games in Sudamericana. How do you think Marimon will perform at that level should Mineros get through? And do you think a good season in Venezuela could be enough to maybe reinvigorate his career, perhaps not back to the same level of expectation he had at 16, but he still is only, 22, I think, 21, 22?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. You're absolutely right. 6 games in the Sudamericana, back to something close to his Once Caldas form. And again, then options open up. You know, I don't know. Like, I think with Marimon, he needs to get games because he hasn't played regularly since 2018. And obviously, going to Europe, going to Belgium will have had some benefits in his development, but he didn't get the game time there and he suffered with injuries. So I think the most important thing for Jesus Marimon is to get 6 months first team football under his belt. If he can do that, then we're back in the game. Then we can look and then we can see where's next and where he can go to get back to his full fitness. So we'll see. I think I can see this being a risk all around. I can see the club seeing this as a risk for a player who's had such difficulties. But I think it's and I can see the player perhaps seeing it as a step down from being in Belgium, a top division team in Belgium. So I can see him seeing maybe this as a bit of a step down, maybe obviously not where he planned to be at this stage in his career. But I think everyone's taking a bit of a risk in this deal. And if it pays off, I'll be delighted for everybody. And again, if we get 80% of the Jesus Marimon we saw as an 18, 19-year-old, then I think he'll be a huge player in the Venezuelan league. We'll just have to see what he's got left in the tank.
One thing we saw this transfer window was not just exciting Colombian arrivals to Liga FUTVE, but also many players that were standouts in 2020 from Liga FUTVE go to Colombia's top flight. We had Jose Contreras, who was actually the FUTVE English Player of the Season, joined Deportivo Pasto, the goalkeeper. Jose Hernandez Chavez, who was perhaps Trujillanos' best player last season, alongside perhaps Juan Carmona, who I know you're a fan of and we can talk a bit about later. And also Jaguares, really interestingly, signed a number of Venezuelans this window. Eduardo Sosa joined from Fort Lauderdale in the USL into Miami's affiliate side. And Jose Marufo also joined alongside Jose Barajan. And so it was a really strong Venezuelan presence going on at Jaguares, and Sosa has very much hit the ground running. The big social media account on Twitter, Sudan Analytics, who are experts at what they do with the data crunching in South American football, listed him alongside Jefferson Soteldo in the 15 best dribblers under the age of 25 on the continent. Have you seen much of Sosa since he arrived in Colombia? Because for me, he's a wonderful player to watch. And it's quite surprising that his career hasn't really picked up for now, because he moved to MLS, to Columbus Crew, a couple of seasons ago, but it didn't really kickstart his career in the way that many people thought it would.
Yeah, I think it's kind of natural for Colombian clubs to be looking into Venezuela, and I think it's something they need to do more of. We've seen some clubs make that smart move. I think Jaguares, it's a great idea for them as a team, kind of looking to improve and to step things up. And I think it would be good to see some of the bigger teams go for some of the bigger players. I think Tolima have done some great business on Venezuelans recently. Some of their standout players have come from Venezuela, which has been a great step for them. And obviously Gonzalez is now in junior, and he was a big signing for them. I think hopefully over time, and I do hope this, the big clubs will look more to Venezuela. Obviously Atlético Nacional, the team here, they had great service, and one of the great fan favorites for that club is Alejandro Guerra, Lobo Guerra. He's still adored by the fans. And then obviously signed Lucena, and that obviously didn't work out as well. And I think that may have scared them off a little bit in recent years. But yeah, we'll see. I think that's a huge opportunity for Colombian sides in general. I think obviously the difficulties financially Venezuela has with the pandemic and with the economic situation means that it's a big opportunity for Colombian clubs to sign players who, on talent alone, they shouldn't be able to acquire. I think they've done some great business. Some of the mid-table Colombian sides, the likes of Pasto, as you mentioned, signing some top Venezuelan talent. I think this is something Colombian clubs should definitely continue to be looking at. Graterol, I think at America, obviously one of the bigger clubs, he's come in and he wasn't expected to be a first-team player, and very quickly he took over the first-team spot and has been one of the best goalkeepers in the league. Contreras as well is one of the better goalkeepers in the league. Wilker Fariñas as well for years was one of the best goalkeepers in the league. So in just that position, we can see the three of the best Colombian, goalkeepers in the Colombian league in the last 2 or 3 years have come from Venezuela. So no, I think it's something that's very interesting and something that Colombian clubs are going to find a lot of value in doing. And I think each player who comes brings a new shows the Colombian market, the value of exploring that option. Seijas as well is obviously hugely popular in Santa Fe and is now doing well in junior as well.
Yeah, he's the leading Venezuelan scorer in Colombian football history of just over 30 goals. Interestingly, the second or third highest scorer is Rafael Dudamel, who of course was a goalkeeper, but for his set piece prowess is quite high up the goal scoring leaderboards for Venezuela in Colombia. But we've also seen that it's not just in one or two positions that Colombia have seen value in Venezuelan players, as you've mentioned the goalkeepers already, but also Jose Marufo and Henry Plazas, two new signings in defense this season. Jose Hernandez Chavez is a midfielder, and Seijas as well. And then Jose Barajan has made a decent start for Jaguares up front. If you were advising Colombian teams on what talent there is in Liga FUTVE that could either make an immediate impact or perhaps ones for the future, who would you be recommending that they take a look at?
Oh, yeah, where do I start? there's a lot of options there. There's a lot of options. And I think as well, obviously, the situation in Venezuela is difficult. I think there's huge value in the Venezuelan market. I mean, going from the back, I mean, you mentioned Antoni Carmona. He would be ideal for Colombia. They love an attacking fullback. Antoni can play as a winger, as an attacking fullback. I think he's ideal. He reminds me a lot from the Colombian side of Snyder Mena, who I like a lot. I think Snyder Mena is the right-sided version of Antoni Carmona for me. But Antoni is an obvious one for me. Great defensive numbers, gets a lot of service into the box. Antoni is a player who would do well in so many different leagues. So for me, obviously, left-sided player. In central defense, I mean, I like Hector Acosta. I know he's just moved clubs in Venezuela. I think he's a very good, assertive central defender. Good in the air, a good defender overall. Very, very interesting. I think Pacheco will be a natural option for a Colombian team. An energetic, kind of assertive, physical central midfielder. For me, he reminds me a lot of a typical Colombian central midfielder. With that physicality. He's quite typical of Colombia. I think with Venezuela as well, what is slightly different, I mean, Colombia and Venezuela have many things that are similar, but there's also quite a few changes, quite a few differences. And I think a lot of Venezuelan players as well come from like a European background, come a very well kind of educated, wealthier background, which is quite interesting because that isn't the typical experience of Colombian players or where Colombian players often come from. It's much rarer in Colombia to have players of a European descent. So that brings with it, different qualities in players as well. I think that's interesting to look at. But yeah, I like Yonder Gomez reminds me a bit of a Jorman Camposano, kind of a smart, deep-lying midfielder, very good on the ball, likes to pass, likes to create. So yeah, just honestly, there's a lot. Adam Baru will be great. There's players who I think, Andres Ferro's a great defender as well, very good in defense. Danny Hernandez will be a great option for Colombian sides at right back. Again, he's got the physicality. He's got good technique on the ball. You go up through the sides. Angelo Lucena will be great as well. Whether Colombian football could attract these guys is another question. But I think a lot of them would be very welcome and do very, very well in Colombia. I think what Colombian teams have gone for, it seems initially, is kind of these wide players who kind of fit the Colombian style. But I think in the future, Colombia could look to bring in some of these technical players, because I think perhaps underappreciated is the technical ability and the game intelligence, the tactical awareness of some of these creative players, such as Angelo Lucena. I think that could not only complement the Colombian style of play with the pace and directness out wide that they've been bringing in so far, the likes of Seijas or some of these wide players. But I think they could bring some of these more technical, creative, intelligent players to complement that. And the likes of Angelo Lucena, I think, would not only complement Colombian football, but kind of help push it forward. So, yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. And also, I mean, the fact that Colombia has a huge Venezuelan population now as well. I think that's not something to be overlooked, in terms of attracting fans to the stadium, in terms of getting investment from this big population of well over 1 million Venezuelans. Obviously, Venezuela has many Colombians and Colombia has many Venezuelans. So I think it's something that can help bring a connection between Venezuelan people and certain Colombian teams. I know Seijas has been very, very popular in Bogota and has done an important ambassadorial role as well for Venezuela, in terms of representing Venezuela in a positive way and working with charities and working with groups in Bogota looking to help integrate and welcome Venezuelans into Colombian society as well.
That's great to hear, and something that probably is overlooked, especially to an English language audience, to South American football. But that is a massively important role, particularly between Venezuela and Colombia, because the immigration, as you'll know, having been in Colombia for 12 years, hasn't always been a one-way barrage from Venezuela to Colombia. We go back 15 years ago and it was very much the other way. Colombia had the largest displaced population in the world, and Venezuela, had a very open border in their relation to Colombia, and took many in. But, in recent years, it is very much the other way. So that's great to hear that Seijas has had such a positive involvement in the local community. It's news to me, and it's lovely to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think it's important to have this connection. As you say, it's a two-way thing. Colombians for 20 years went to Venezuela seeking safety, seeking economic prosperity, seeking security and stability. And obviously in recent years, the trend has reversed. And I think many Colombians feel that connection with Venezuela, for that historical connection. Now, obviously, there are going to be tensions with that kind of movement of people. So it's always good to have, Venezuelan heroes here in Colombia. And I think for Santa Fe fans, you could never hear a Santa Fe fan say a bad word about Venezuelans, given the contribution Seijas has had and how he's represented Venezuela so positively in the city. So, yeah, I think they're two countries that have huge connections, and while the politics and some tensions exist nowadays, there's many more things that unite these two countries than divide them. And I think bringing some chamos across the border is always great to have some representatives of that community to help connect the Venezuelan people with these institutions and these clubs, and bring everybody together.
Yeah, and I won't put you on the spot by talking about the women's game too much in Colombia, but it's also important to say a lot of Venezuelans in recent years have gone there and done an incredible job. Jomar Guaracuco scored an incredible goal that I saw you tweet about for America de Cali in the Copa Libertadores Femenino. Breathtaking goal, like shades of Matt Latiz for me as a Saints fan. The last minute of the game, audacious, like lobbing kind of goal from distance to take them to a shootout in a game where, they were absolutely mullered statistically, but managed to hold on and get that goal. And Yosora Viso sadly wasn't able to play in Libertadores, but she was top goal scorer and player of the tournament last season, another Venezuelan. One thing that I noticed about the transfer window in January, February, even into March, where the seasons when Venezuela haven't yet started, a lot of the Venezuelans that went to Colombia were older, and some, you said they'd stuck to players on the flanks a lot, or more defensively minded, which you're right to do so. And the players are also older, and the one player that was a technical player like an Angelo Lucena, Eduardo Sosa, had spent a couple years out of Venezuela first, almost as if, Colombian teams were only really willing to sign a Venezuelan if they were proven somewhere else or were older. Do you think there's a particular reason why there might be a reluctance to sign young Venezuelans? Because the ones you were naming, like Pacheco, who is going to be new to a lot of Venezuelans as well. At Hermanos, 2020 was his breakthrough season, but he really did well in defensive midfield. And also Honda Gomez, you pointed out at Estudiantes de Merida, also under 20. Do you think there's a particular reason why maybe Colombian teams aren't gambling on young Venezuelan players? Carmona is currently available on a free, for example.
Yeah, I think there's definitely that old school prejudice. Of course, Colombia is used to being a good step or two above Venezuela in terms of football. Now, obviously, we've seen the rise of the Venezuelan national team. We've seen Venezuelan clubs incredibly competitive in the Libertadores, despite the huge financial disparities. We've seen Venezuela reach a U20 World Cup final. So I think those who are paying attention will have realized, Jesus, this is a top 30 FIFA ranked team in the world. This isn't the Moldova of South American football, as perhaps it was, at certain points in history. So I think, of course, Colombians have that sense of, superiority in terms of football over Venezuela, historical. And that's something that's going to have to change gradually, and they'll have to be educated on the realities of the situation. You speak to a Colombian, and instinctively they'll go, yeah, Venezuela, yeah, they try hard, because they're used to, the World Cup qualifiers in the 90s where, Venezuela would try to keep the score down. But the situation today is quite different. And I think gradually we're seeing that change. So again, I think you're right to point out that they've gone for players who have proven it over 5 years, or who play in a position where you can think maybe, oh, they've got that physical advantage. They'll come in and they'll run hard, and maybe they're not going to be as good as us Colombian players, but they'll try their best. They'll run, and I think we're going to see that opinion change. So I think it's interesting to point that out, that what they bet on is the safest possible options. I think smart clubs will start taking these kids in on trials. They'll look at them at a young age. Why not? It's just across the border. What's Cucuta to some of the Trujillanos at Cucuta? How far is that? A few hours? Take them in for a week and take them on trial. So I think it's interesting to see how long it takes Colombian clubs to wake up to that, and to see which clubs can get to the front of the queue. I saw Tolima sign Giovandri and Gonzalez, and they were two impactful players for them. They immediately improved the side of the team, Orozco and Gonzalez. So that for me was kind of a wake up moment for me. Like, Tolima suddenly jumped ahead by signing a couple of Venezuelans. So it will be interesting to see which teams go, okay, well, we can't pin down the very best Colombians, but we could probably get 2 or 3 of the better players from the Venezuelan league, and that's going to make a huge impact on our side. We can get players that we shouldn't be able to get in terms of level, inside Colombia, because of the competition from the big clubs who will sweep up all the best Colombian players. But if we can get some of the top Venezuelan talent, that's going to make us very, very competitive at the top of the league. So I think every player who comes is going to be a learning moment, a learning opportunity for some Colombians who are still perhaps a bit behind the times, because European clubs are waking up. I know MLS clubs have woken up a long time ago to the potential in MLS. So I think it's a little bit embarrassing for Colombia to be behind the trend. But I think when they realize, I wouldn't be surprised if they have scouts all over Venezuela picking up the best of the best, who they can drag away from MLS clubs or European clubs who are now very much keeping their eye on Venezuelan football.
Yeah, it was astute to mention MLS, actually, because this window they've signed Wickelman Carmona to New York Red Bulls. That contract was signed weeks before he even turned 18. He's never kicked a ball professionally at club level. He's come straight out of a private academy, and New York Red Bulls have given him an international spot, which, they come at a premium in US football. There's a limit on how many foreigners you can have in your roster. And DC United have signed Giovanni Bolivar from Deportivo La Guaira, the 2020 champions, as well as Darluis Bass, who's gone to their USL affiliate team, Loudoun United. Do you think these 3 players that I've named, particularly the 2 that have gone to DC United and Loudoun United, are these players that Colombian teams have missed out on?
Oh, undoubtedly. I mean, these are top quality players. I think, you look at the Venezuelan U20 team, and, we had there was a training camp recently. We're talking 25, 30 players, I think, in the training camp. How many of those would be options for Colombian teams? Probably 15, 16, 17 would potentially, with a strong move, a strong bid from a Colombian side, move across to Colombia. Now, if you're Rio Negro Águilas, you're a mid-table Colombian team, you have no chance of signing the U20 Colombian national team players. They're locked into contracts with the biggest clubs. They're already on their way to Europe. They've got, agents representing them. Everything's tied down for them to leave, and they're already out of your budget. But if you move swiftly and strongly in the Venezuelan market, looking for the top U20 players, you're going to find a similar level of talent, but you're going to be able to acquire these players. So again, I think every Venezuelan who leaves now, obviously that's a great move. MLS is a great place to go, and this is great for the players. But yeah, Colombian clubs should see these players moving abroad and think they're missing opportunities, because Colombia should be in an advantageous position. They could bring these players across on trial when they're 17 years old. They could have a very good understanding of who the talents are and get them signed up before people notice, because as well as some of these MLS clubs have done, I still think clubs are very slow to be focusing on Venezuela, given the opportunity, given the value in the market. So I think there's been a huge step forward, and I wouldn't be surprised if more Venezuelan players move to top leagues than Colombian players, just because of the value in the market, because of the opportunity there is there in the last 6 months. And that will be a shock to Colombian ears, because, you know, they're just used to Venezuela being the younger brother across the border who tries their best and might pop up with a Alejandro Guerra once in a while. But really, Colombia needs to wake up to the growing strength of Venezuelan football and the opportunity, and they really need to plug themselves into that. And I think there's something they should be looking to do, and clubs are doing it, but I think there's potential for much more.
I think it's really refreshing and nice to hear you say that. I know, like, you're very much an Englishman, but you're also a Colombian. Like, you literally have the passport, and you've been there for 12 years. Because a lot of Venezuelans, football fans, have pointed out to me over the past 12, 18 months just how biased the Colombian commentary of Venezuelan football teams in like Libertadores and Sudamericana can be, just how condescending and patronizing it can be. And one thing that really stuck out last year was the Colombian commentary of the Copa Libertadores game between Independiente Medellin and Caracas Football Club. Obviously, Caracas won 3-2 away from home on Colombian soil. That was a historic night for Venezuelan football, but was almost overshadowed, from what I was told, by the commentary, which was quite condescending to Caracas and their players. Anderson Contreras, who scored a wonderful free kick that game and got 2 assists, was described as from a place not even on the map, which was offensive to many. There was players like Eduardo Ferreira, the right back, whose name was mispronounced all night long, and he wasn't the only player whose name was mispronounced all night long. And this was, you know, 1 or 2 of these things could be considered mistakes, but because there were so many of these occurrences throughout the 90 minutes from the commentary team, and because of the history that you alluded to between the attitude perhaps that's prevailed between Colombian football fans in relation to Venezuelan football, it was more than just a few mistakes. It was more than a coincidence. And, you know, Venezuelan football fans were very unhappy about it. Is that something that, you know, you've touched upon, the sort of like little brother or little cousin attitude that there is, but do you think this is something that plays into it? Because at the end of the day, if the commentary are being dismissive of Venezuelan talent, like, what hope is there for the public perception to change?
Yeah, I think one of Colombia's problems, and again, we're not talking about a Venezuelan problem here. You know, obviously I understand the sense of wanting to be respected on the world, and I think Colombia suffers from that more broadly. Colombia worries about the perception of the world and worries about how they're dismissed in terms of, you know, social issues and violence and all that kind of stuff. So that's something that Colombians should be more sensitive to. But I think if a Colombian commentator is dismissing you, probably take it as a compliment, simply because for example, on the Colombian panel show, they were asked about the group, which included Junior, Flamengo, Independiente del Valle, and Barcelona of Ecuador. And the commentator said, Flamengo and Junior, Independiente del Valle don't exist. And that was before Independiente del Valle completely destroyed the group. And that's Independiente del Valle, the reigning U20 Libertadores champions, the reigning Sudamericana champions, and the 2016 Libertadores finalists. So first of all, I would say many Colombian commentators are idiots. But also, yeah, I mean, it is reflective of a broader issue. And I think there is that patronizing sense of things, but I think that's more a problem for Colombia. And it's something that's not going to impact on Venezuela, but it will impact on Colombia. You know, in an inability to adjust to the times, an inability to see what is clear in front of their eyes. That Colombian football has huge qualities and huge potential and great talent, but it's perhaps a little bit behind the times in terms of ideas. I think Venezuela has the benefit of coming from a lower level, but increasing incredibly quickly and having the opportunity to define itself in a more open way. Colombia has become, I think, in terms of football, a little complacent. It has many things that it does very well, but I think it's not innovating in the way that Independiente del Valle are innovating. It's not innovating as the way that Venezuela has the potential to innovate as a country that has a humble approach, I think, to its development and its improvement and its changes. You know, Venezuela, I think, has a good understanding that it's improving very, very quickly and is looking for ways to make the most of that situation. So I think a Colombian complacency, I think, in the long run will just play into the hands of Venezuelan football, because Venezuela is looking how it can improve and Colombia is laughing at any bad result against the Venezuelan team. And I think in the long run, that's going to benefit one side and help another team to suffer a little bit, one side.
Mm-hmm. And if these moves are to be made, if Colombian teams are to wake up to the talent next door, what kind of financial clout do these teams have to make the moves? Because although, like I touched upon, Juan Carmona is currently a free transfer because of the situation at Trujillanos and their financial predicament. His contract ran out at the end of 2020. We also saw this window, Daniel Perez go to Club Brugge for $250,000, his release clause. Obviously, that's not the price that Europeans are used to South Americans coming to Europe on. Like, they're used to $1 million fees, to 10 plus on some occasions. But you know, for listeners that don't have any background knowledge on Colombian football, what's the financial clout of the bigger teams? Can they afford to buy the best young Venezuelan talent, the ones that are tied down to multi-year contracts? Like Lucena, as a name that you mentioned, he renewed his contract for 2 years at Portuguesa. Could a Colombian team have the financial clout to buy him?
Yeah, I definitely think they could. I mean, the likes of, you know, Junior and Atlético Nacional and Millonarios, even with the difficulties, and right now they can pay a $3, $4, $5 million transfer fee. Even the smaller clubs in Colombia, in terms of what they can offer in wages. Now, again, from a European perspective, it's going to seem very low, but you know, the smallest team in the Colombian top flight could easily offer $2,000, $3,000 wages. Which, you know, again, I don't know how typical this is, but there seems to be certain players in Venezuela on $200, $300, $400 a month. Now, obviously, the exchange rate factors into that. The dollar's obviously very strong in Venezuela, and it's possible to get by on that kind of money. Again, I think with the pandemic, certain clubs have been struggling to pay wages as well, which is an issue in some Colombian clubs, but I think probably less of an issue. Cucuta, obviously a famous example of a club that hasn't been paying their wages and now gone out of business. So I think Colombian clubs can afford the transfer fees. Whether they're ready to make that kind of investment in a player from the Venezuelan league, I doubt. For more than $200,000, $300,000, I don't think they'd make that kind of investment yet. But the more players they bring across on loans, on cheaper deals, on free transfers, that kind of stuff, the more comfortable they'll feel. And again, they should feel ridiculous. Atlético Nacional could have signed Daniel Perez in November, December. They could have found 250 grand and signed Daniel Perez, no problem. And he's now a player worth 5, 10, who knows how many million in Europe already. You know, he's a player involved in the first team at Club Brugge. He's already got himself on the score sheet. So, you know, if you go to Nacional and say, why didn't you sign Daniel Perez? They might say, yeah, well, he's kind of, you know, he's done okay in the Venezuelan league, but this is a step up. And you go to them now and say, would you like Daniel Perez? And they say, yeah, of course, but he's out of our range. You know, we couldn't possibly attract a player of that level. So it's just timing, and it's having that confidence, and hopefully over time that changes. But I think what we'll expect is more cheap deals, free transfer loans in the short term until these clubs feel confident to put the money behind it. But we'll see. You know, there's important Venezuelan players all over Colombia now, and obviously Fariñas is one which was involved in a quite significant transfer to Millonarios, and has then moved on. So perhaps clubs in the right circumstances would put up the money, but I think we'll see more quantity in the short term, but then hopefully they'll start backing it up with some big bids in the future. Or maybe not. Maybe we want to see the players stay in Venezuela and stay in the FUTVE English world.
Yeah, I think for Venezuela, as a first and foremost a fan of Venezuelan football and wanting it to improve as quickly and as securely in terms of that sustainability to the progress being maintained. I'd like to see Liga FUTVE be in a position where it's exporting its best players direct to Europe. I think that's the real measure of progress, is the league having the strength of reputation and the financial strength to demand European clubs for their best players. I think bypassing their players going to other South American leagues, instead going straight to, I think, even MLS and Europe, is a real mark of progress. For example, if Jefferson Soteldo was 19 today, would a player of his quality be going to Chile as his first move? I'd like to think no. I'd like to think he'd be going direct to Europe. Instead, obviously, he's doing tremendous things at Santos, but a lot of Venezuelans are still just begging for the day where he goes to Europe. It's interesting what you said about Daniel Perez as the example for Colombia, because, again, going back to Sudan Analytics, an account I definitely recommend anyone follows, they were putting together a casework, I guess, if you like, in December for number 9s to ultimately replace Carlos Tevez of Boca Juniors, and Daniel Perez made that list. So, there are people, whilst he was still at Metropolitanos, by the way, so there are people looking at Liga FUTVE and appreciating the talent that it does have. I think one thing that I've told you about before, where it struggles, is the footage of games that are going to be on Y-Scout, Instat, those other scouting data platforms, are limited to the top flight. You've got an incredibly decent under 18s and under 20s league in Venezuela that, unless you're on the ground in Venezuela scouting and seeing, you're not seeing. And if you can get the numbers on it, which aren't the easiest to get to, they're still just numbers on a sheet. If you tell a club in Brazil, I've got a 19-year-old striker who I think would be great for you. He scored 21 goals at under 20 last season, 20 goals at under 18 the season before. They say, oh, okay, we'll have a look. But all they're going to be able to see is, a couple of 100 minutes in the first division. And that's all they've really got to base an opinion on. It's difficult. Daniel Perez 18 months ago was in exactly that same position. He was Metropolitanos' top scorer in the youth league and then in the reserve league as a 17-year-old. But there was nothing video footage-wise to show for it. Fortunately, he'd had the call-up to the under-17s national team and played well in 2019. And Club Bruges also had the benefit of being tipped off about him early, and then he had a very strong end to 2020. But there are players that should already be demanding that attention before they hit the Venezuelan first team. Jesus Orozco at Deportivo Táchira, for me, has the ability to be the next Daniel Perez. He's actually older by a year, but he's a player that slammed the goal scoring records for Deportivo Táchira at every youth level, and is now going to broke into the first team in 2020, and hopefully has a very strong 2021. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see whether Venezuela can continue to improve their rate of transfers direct to Europe and get the money that they deserve for these transfers. So thank you very much for joining us today, Simon. Have you got any last words on Venezuelan football or Colombian football, how they overlap for our listeners that may not know either of the country's leagues?
No, I'm not sure if I have, but I thank you for the invitation. I'm suddenly very interested in Venezuelan football. I think the talent's there. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think with the league requirement to field U17, U20 players, I think it's a perfect place to be scouting and finding talent. And, you have players who are 18 years old who've had 2 full seasons of first team football. It's amazing. So now Venezuelan football is very, very exciting. I'm looking forward to I'm actually going to be watching the Venezuelan teams playing in the Sudamericana this week rather than the big boys in the Libertadores. So I'm fully converted, and I'm happy to see things going well and seeing where this can go.
So this is going to go out Wednesday morning. So for anyone that listens to it within the first 12 hours or so, the Copa Sudamericana games wouldn't have taken place. So I'm going to ask you for your predictions. Mineros are currently leading Arago 1-0. Can they hold on? And secondly, Academia Puerto Cabello are trailing Metropolitanos 2-0. Can they turn it around?
Okay, well, I saw less of the Mineros game, but I'm going to stick with Mineros. I think they're going to get it done. My boy, Danny Hernandez at left back, I'm a big fan. I think he's going to whip in a cross or score a long-range golazo. So we'll see for Mineros. With Metropolitanos, it's a fascinating one. I thought they were very, very well organized. They did a really good job. I think it will, a comeback will all come down to a bit of La Cava magic. He looked a little bit isolated in the first leg. I think Metropolitanos did a very good job of keeping it tight. So I think if they can stay organized, I think Metropolitanos should see that one out quite comfortably. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. We'll see what happens.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much. And for what it's worth, I think Aragua will turn it around, and I hope so, because I'm a big fan of Kike Garcia, the Aragua manager. He's very much a student of the game, and I enjoy watching Aragua play. But yeah, I've got to agree with you with Metropolitanos. Jose Maria Moore is such an organised coach. I can't see him letting a 2-goal lead slip. So yeah, they're going to be 2 exciting games, and whoever goes through, I'm just going to be looking forward to watching more Venezuelan action on the international stage, thanks to the change of format in the Sudamericana. So again, thank you for joining us, Simon, and thank you for listening. This is the FUTVE English podcast. Bye-bye.